But first, the nation's governors are meeting this weekend here in Washington. And we have two of them meeting here this morning for a debate. The chairman of the Republican Governors Association, Louisiana's Bobby Jindal, and the Democratic governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick. And how are the states taking on the big issues that Washington is debating, from the budget to gun control, health care, and abortion? And Governor Jindal, Governor Patrick, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you.
Good to see both of you. Look, this is immediate impact, Governor Jindal. Here is the front page of the American Press newspaper from Lake Charles, Louisiana, your home state, just yesterday, showing that local air traffic control is on the funding block with this sequestration. And you heard the secretary say this is real disruption because they got to cut $1 billion.
You know, the president, and you heard Ray compare the president to Lincoln. We need real presidential leadership here. The president needs to stand up to the plate. If he really thinks this is going to devastate the military, really think this is going to devastate air traffic control, really devastate meat inspections, and they've rolled out this great political theater about how cutting less than 3% of the federal budget is going to cause all these awful consequences. Here's his chance to say, here's how we can do it better. The reality is the federal budget this year, even after the cuts, will still be larger than last year's budget. Bob Woodward's got a great piece where he tells the president, basically, he doesn't use these words, but he basically says the president has amnesia about this. The president sequester, he signed this into law, and now he doesn't want to make these cuts. The reality is nobody is saying he should make these exact cuts, but we can cut less than 3% of the budget without hollowing out our military, without jeopardizing air traffic, without jeopardizing meat inspections. It's ridiculous.
All right, but so you're saying to folks in your state who are reading that headline, they can solve this?
Absolutely. Look, governors solve this. Families out there, businesses during this national recession have had to tighten their belts, do more with less. We're talking about less than 3%. We're talking about a federal budget that's still going to grow. Now, let's be clear about this. Only in Washington, D.C. is that a cut. You ask any American out there, is there at least 3% of the federal budget that is being wasted today in the Department of Transportation's budget? Members of Congress are pointing out hundreds of millions of dollars spent on consulting contracts, on travel. Let's not cut the air traffic controllers first. Let's go cut the waste. One thing that Ray said that I do agree with, let's give them the ability to shift those dollars and make some real priorities and make some real smart spending cuts. Don't do it with an axe, do it with a scalpel. But the president needs to step up to the plate and say to Congress, here's how you can cut $85 billion. I've got an idea for him.
Right. But he has said that. He has said it. It's just Congress doesn't want to raise, revenues.
Just delay the Medicaid expansions, delay the health care exchanges so they can work with states on waivers, on flexibility. You could save tens of billions of dollars there and you're not even cutting a program that started yet. Just delay it.
All right, Governor Patrick, I'm looking at our sheet here. More than 60,000 cuts, both Department of Defense and non-Department of Defense in your state alone.
That's right.
Job losses because of sequestration.
Right. This is all about growth, and it's always been about growth from the president's perspective, and it ought to be about growth from the American people's perspective and all of our from all of our point of view. And government has a role to play in that. The president understands that. You know, I've listened to my good friend here, Governor Jindal, who's talked about these issues as if they are budget issues alone. We've actually seen some $2.5 trillion of budget cuts from this president, and the only plan on the table right now to avoid is the president's plan. So this notion about not having leadership, this is about leadership, and the president has shown that a balanced approach, which is about cuts and closing loopholes that enables us to invest in the things that grow jobs, is more important and appropriate for us at this time.
Look at the polling, Governor Jindal. I mean, the White House point is, look, the president campaigned on his theory of the case for economic growth, for fiscal balance. It included more revenues, some of which came as a result of the fiscal cliff fight. But now he's talking about closing additional loopholes. And look, John Boehner himself, the Speaker of the House, said that this would hurt national security to let this sequester go forward. So why not agree to some more revenues to go along with cuts?
Well, three things. One, we are for growth. We're for growing the American economy, not the government economy. You've seen the greed of Wall Street being replaced with the greed of Washington, D.C. There's never enough revenues, never enough taxes for this administration. I agree with my friend. We should be about growing the private sector economy, real jobs out there. Look, nobody is saying that we should do the cuts this way, but we're saying in 2011, this president also campaigned on a commitment he made. He made it to Congress. He proposed a law. He signed into law saying he didn't want to have the deficit fight. He didn't want to have the budget ceiling fight in 2012 when he was campaigning. So he said in exchange for that raising the ceiling, he signed in this law, this $85 billion cut. He already has over $600 billion in new revenues. He's already had over $600 billion in increased spending. We are for a balanced approach. We've had more than enough new revenues. We've had more than enough growth in government spending. Now's the time to start shrinking our spending so we can grow the private sector economy, not the government.
David, first of all, this isn't about whether there are or are not going to be cuts. The president's plan has cuts. In fact, to some extent, deeper cuts than the sequester provides. It also has the closing of loopholes, some of the same loopholes that Speaker Boehner favored only a little while ago. And what we've seen is more of the same. The congressional Republicans move the goalposts as soon as the president comes. He's got a plan on the table that has an awful lot of things they say they support. Put it to a vote, because with Democrats and moderate Republicans, it will pass and it will be good for the economy.
You know, there's a broader question here about leadership of executives, and you're both executives. How tough is it in a second term? How are those challenges different as you move forward and you have a little bit more experience behind you, Governor?
Well, look, my recommendation to the president is it's time to stop campaigning. It is time to actually do the job here in Washington, D.C. In our second term, for example, last year we passed one of the most sweeping educational reform laws in the country, giving real choice to our kids, putting great teachers in the classroom, reforming our tenure laws, letting the dollars follow the child. This year, like my colleague, we're proposing significant tax reform. We've got different ideas about that. We're trying to get rid of the income tax in Louisiana. My advice to the president is stop the campaigning, stop sending out your cabinet secretaries to scare the American people. Roll up your sleeves and do the hard work of governing. I'm for closing those loopholes, by the way. Let's use those revenues to lower tax rates so we can grow the economy, so we don't have the world's highest corporate income tax rates, so we put more money in the private sector economy. Now, Walmart and other companies are saying, thanks to the tax increases, they're actually seeing business slow down. We don't need more taxes. We need more private sector growth, not government growth.
Peggy Noonan, who's on the program, Governor Patrick, in her column yesterday said, with the president, it's always government by freakout. Does she have a point about that? She says it's always cliffs, ceilings, and looming catastrophes of Barack Obama, always government by freakout. That's what's happening now with the daily sequester warning. 700,000 children will be dropped from Head Start. 600,000 women and children will be dropped from aid programs. Meat won't be inspected. 7,000 TSA workers will be laid off. Customs workers to air traffic controllers. Mr. Obama has finally hit on his own version of national unity. Everyone gets scared together.
No one turns a phrase like Peggy Noonan. Look, this is not of the president's creation. You know, this president didn't campaign and hasn't wanted to govern by constantly being in conflict with congressional Republicans. But from the very beginning, remember, it was a leadership of the Republicans in the Senate who said that their #1 agenda was to make this president a one-term president. And having won a second term, their #1 agenda is to slow down the recovery of our economy. And that needs to be called out. It is a fact that a sequester is going to have an impact, particularly on education in our state, and I think also in Louisiana. It's going to have an impact on innovation investments. It's going to have an impact on infrastructure investments. And those three things have been the formula for our growing in Massachusetts faster than the national growth rate and coming out of recession faster than most other states. It's a winning formula for the nation as well, and we cannot slow that down.
Just one thing for the record, as I think the White House stipulates, it was the president's idea, the sequester formulation, and of course Republicans agreed to it, 174 agreeing to it. But let me move on to a couple of other areas. Some big issues that states are debating, that of course Washington is debating. And I want to start on the issue of Obamacare. Governor Jindal, you seem to be bucking the trend among Republicans. A lot of Republican governors are saying, you know what, we're going to go with what the White House wants. We're going to expand our Medicaid rules, which is our option under the health care plan. We'll have to pay some upfront money, but the federal government will pay more of it. And you're saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Other Republicans are saying, yes, that you should. What do you know that they don't know?
Well, David, I'd say a couple of things. One, I think every governor needs to make the decision that's best for their state. For Louisiana, this would cost us, Louisiana taxpayers, over $1 billion over the next 10 years. I actually agree with what the president said in 2009. He said it doesn't make sense to simply put more people into the Medicaid program without reforming this program. He was right in 2009. They've not reformed the program. We've offered multiple times to meet with the president. We've offered specific suggestions to give states flexibility on eligibility, on benefit design, on premium assistance, so it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. In Louisiana alone, as many as 180,000 people with private insurance to Medicaid under this expansion. That doesn't make sense. It is not effective outcomes. It is not an efficient program. We've offered to meet with the president. He is yet to respond to us. I think there are actually opportunities on a bipartisan basis to reform this program for those governors that are expanding, as well as those governors that are not expanding. I don't think, look, I do believe everybody in America should have access to affordable health care, but I agree with what the president said in 2009. It doesn't make sense to put more people into this program without expanding it, without reforming it.
Governor Patrick?
Well, you know, of course, national health care reform is based on our own experiment in Massachusetts. It's been wildly successful. Over 98% of our residents have access to affordable health care today. 99.3%, I think it is, of children. I don't think any other state in America can touch that. There are more businesses offering insurance to their employees today than before health care reform went into effect. It has not broken our budget, and it's very, very popular. And we have found a tremendous amount of flexibility with this administration and actually with the Bush administration before them in implementing this. So, I understand that there are philosophical reasons for not supporting this president's solution, but rather than having the usual choices, which was between a perfect solution and no solution, we tried something in this country, and I congratulate the president.
Take something like gun control. I mean, it looks like there may be some movement toward universal background checks, but you see New York and Connecticut kind of pursuing their own approach. Are states going to go about this differently, or are a lot of states, particularly with more pro-gun rights supporters, not going to do anything and let Washington have its own battle?
Look, we've proposed legislation in Louisiana. Our session starts in April. I've proposed legislation. I think there's an opportunity to do something here. If we're serious about doing something and not just having a political football here, I think we can work with Democrats. We can work even with the administration to say, I think we all agree that we shouldn't have guns getting in the hands of those with serious mental illnesses. We've proposed legislation to provide more of that information, more of those records into the background check system than is happening today. Look at the current background system. I think there's actually some things. Now, if the president wants to get something done, that's what we can do. If, however, there are areas where there are agreement, if, however, he just wants a political football, we could just have a debate.
Are you going to have a patchwork of laws? Is that the reality?
I hope not. I hope not. I think we can agree on a more rigorous background check system. In fact, I mean, we can have as rigorous a set of laws in our own home state as possible, but if you can buy guns in bulk right over the state line and walk them in, it doesn't really help. So there are some solutions that have to be national in nature. The
tax debate is interesting. Here's a couple of headlines that capture different approaches that you have in your respective states. In the Boston Globe, Patrick would hike one tax cut, another seeks to raise almost $2 billion by increasing levies on income while lowering them on sales. Times Picayune headline, Governor Jindal calls for elimination of all Louisiana income and corporate taxes. You want to raise the sales tax, which critics say hurt a lot more average Louisianans. And doesn't it come down to, in some ways, where would you rather live?
We were just talking about that.
Okay, right. And there's lots of reasons, lots of elements to that debate. But here are some statistics, state to state, Massachusetts to Louisiana, that reflect kind of more services, less taxes, and different results. Let's put that up there. You have a bigger population in Massachusetts. You see that there. The high school graduation rate much higher in Massachusetts. The median income about 20,000 higher. Percentage of population without health care insurance, much higher. In Louisiana, the percentage of population on food stamps, much higher in Louisiana. So do results break a little bit along some of the ideological and philosophical lines about taxes and the amount of government services?
Well, David, I'd actually say look at how far Louisiana has come. We're actually a top 10 state when it comes to private sector job creation. Unemployment rate 5.5% lower than in Massachusetts. You look in Louisiana, we're actually, our per capita income is now, our average per capita income has risen despite the national recession, highest ranking in 80 years. We talked about children's uninsured rate, 96.5% of our children have insurance. You look at the charter schools in New Orleans, doubling the percentage of kids on grade level in reading and math in the last 5 years. After 25 years of losing our people, last 5 years in a row, we've had more people move into the state rather than leave the state. One of the few states that is actually gaining jobs despite the slow national recovery. So when you look at the movement and progress, I think you see tremendous growth in Louisiana. When it comes to taxes, we actually have proposed a tax reform that will protect our low middle income families, allow our economy to grow more quickly. What you're seeing is those states without an income tax actually do better in terms of economic growth. It really comes back to, if you want to encourage investment and growth, stop taxing it, stop discouraging it. I think we'll actually see higher income, higher job creation, more economic growth as a result of getting rid of the income tax.
It helps to have oil and gas too.
It doesn't hurt.
Which we don't have at home. I mean, it is always about what kind of community, what kind of commonwealth or state or country we want to live in, and we very much believe that at a time when the whole world economy is involved in a knowledge explosion, we have to invest in education. And I'm proud of what we have done there, and the fact that we are #1 in the nation in student achievement. It is true that we are about a point higher in unemployment unemployment than Louisiana, but our GDP is growing 4 times the rate of Louisiana, so we'll catch up with them pretty quickly. And we have a proven strategy of investing in education, in innovation, and in infrastructure, and that's why we've come out of recession faster than most other states. I think that's a strategy, by the way, that works for this nation and has worked historically. And it doesn't mean, that we get stuck on issues about the size of government, big, small. The question is, what do we want government to do? And what are the things that that all of us have a stake in? And I think growing opportunity, we all have a stake in. We've got a winning strategy for that.
All right, before you both go, I want to pin you down, Governor Jindal, on politics. To all of us who cover these matters, it appears that you're positioning yourself for a presidential run. And one level of criticism has come from the Plumline blog and the Washington cites your support for a sales tax, vouchers, rejection of Medicaid expansion, and says the following: Bobby Jindal's rise shows that GOP reform is all cosmetic. The blog writes, Republican reform will remain cosmetic. The GOP will have impressive diversity on the candidate level and the same commitments to right-wing policies that has defined the party for the last 4 years. Is that unfair in your judgment?
Well, a couple of things. One, nobody in the Republican Party should be thinking about running for president. We've got to win the debate before we can win elections. When you look at the policies, if you want to call them right-wing, I think these are good policies for Louisiana, good for America. Every child should get a great K-12 education. Dollars follow the child, great teachers in every classroom. If that's right-wing, then absolutely. I believe we should get rid of all the exemptions, loopholes in the tax code. 468 exemptions in Louisiana's tax code. It should be simpler, easier to fill out your tax form so the government's not distorting your behavior. That's right-wing guilty. And third and finally, to your earlier question, look, government cannot be the answer to all of our problems. This administration has pursued philosophies and policies. We've grown government to historic levels. 6 years in a row. Next year, this year, they're projecting 6 years in a row of unemployment above 7.5%. We have tried this path. It doesn't work. We're offering, in the Republican Party, a different solution, which is about growth, not austerity. It's not being the party of big government, big Wall Street, big banks. I think that's the way we win the argument. That's the way we win elections.
John Huntsman says that it's truly conservative to allow gays and lesbians to marry. Is that a change you could support?
Look, I believe in the traditional definition of marriage. Let's be clear what happened this last election. That we had an election that was dominated by economic issues, unemployment higher than when the president started, right after the election came out. We still lost an election where a majority of the American people said, we think the federal government is doing too much. We lost that election because we didn't present a vision showing how we believe the entire economy can grow, how people can join the middle class. We're an aspirational party, and we need policies that are consistent with that aspiration of private sector.
I'm out of time. Governor, he sounds like, doesn't he?
Sounds like it to me.
But you're going to deny it here on the air, right? You're not running for president?
2016. Let's win the debate. Then we'll win the election.
All right. The debate's going to continue. Governor Jindal, Governor Patrick, always happy to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've got more here, a lot more.